In this video, we're going to go over the very basics of metabolism. Before we get into the meaty biochemistry stuff, we're going to look at the big picture view of metabolism. And to begin with, we're just going to define some terms, and we start with nutrition, which is the intake and utilization of food. Metabolism is all about eating food and how you use it. So this idea of nutrition is important for health, development, and performance. And how you get this nutrition, you will be classified by how you get your energy or nutrition. So autotrophs, all of their cellular constituents are made from simple molecules such as water, carbon dioxide, NH3, or H2S. Chemolithiotrophs, they get their energy through the oxidation of inorganic compounds such as NH3, H2S, and iron. So here we have NH3 and oxygen interacting to make HNO3 and H2O. This process can give a chemolithiotrope energy. You have photoautotrophs. They use light in photosynthesis to transfer electrons to carbon dioxide to make sugars. And heterotrophs, we oxidize organic compounds. We break down the organic compounds from the autotrophs, so we depend on these autotrophs. Some further classifications based on how you do redox reactions in the cell. If you use oxygen, you're aerobe, and if you have to use oxygen, you're an obligate aerobe. Organisms that don't use oxygen, rather if they use sulfates or nitrates, are anaerobes. Anaerobes that could live in the presence of oxygen are facilitative anaerobes. And those that can't live in oxygen, that are poison, are obligate anaerobes. Animals such as humans, we're obligate, so we have to have aerobic oxygen heterotrophs. And we have to eat other organisms. We can't make our own cellular components. We have to break down organic compounds. Now, this idea of nutrition really depends on balance, and you need to take in macronutrients such as proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. And you also need to balance that with the amount of oxygen, water, and micronutrients you need to intake. These micronutrients are your vitamins and minerals. And to further talk about micronutrients, vitamins are organic molecules that animals cannot make, and we have to eat them in our diet. And you have two types: water soluble and fat soluble, basically polar or nonpolar. These water soluble vitamins are usually converted to coenzymes, as we can see here. Here's just a list of your vitamins. No need to memorize this. And we also need some trace elements and minerals for some of your enzymes to work. For example, zinc is important in zinc fingers that are proteins that bind to DNA. So we need to get all of this stuff along with eating proteins and carbohydrates and lipids, all part of our nutrition. Now, to talk about metabolic pathways, all a metabolic pathway is a series of connected enzymatic reactions that makes a specific product. And they use metabolites. A metabolite is simply any reactant, intermediate, or product that is involved in metabolism. So basically, if you're not an enzyme, you're probably going to be a metabolite. In our cells, we know of roughly 4,000 known metabolomic reactions. Each one is catalyzed by a unique enzyme. And the specific enzymes and the amount of metabolites in your cells will vary depending on what developmental stage you're in for the cell. And many of these pathways are actually interconnected. It's not a straight line most of the time. It's a giant web, and everything is connected to everything when it comes to metabolism. For example, here is just a very simple connection. And I'm showing biosynthesis and degradation pathways. And you're going to see this all the time in metabolism. So biosynthesis, we're going to make stuff. And when we make stuff, so we're going to make complex metabolites, we're going to use energy. So we're going to create ADP, and we're going to create NADP+. And we can take these complex metabolites and these spent energy sources, and we can degrade the metabolites and remake our energy sources. So we degrade our metabolites, we can remake energy in the form of ATP and NADPH. These can go back to biosynthesis and so on and so on. So when we start to actually look into some of our metabolic pathways for this semester, we're going to see this all the time. Things are connected, and forward and reverse reactions are connected as well. What is produced in one way of the pathway is used in the other. So let's just focus on catabolism right now. That is the breaking down of things. And many of these catabolic pathways actually only make a few things. And it's really interesting. You have all these varied pathways, yet they all converge to make a few common intermediates. One of the most prevalent one that we'll see a lot is acetyl-coenzyme A, which is shown down here. These intermediates can be further metabolized in a oxidation pathway. And that oxidation pathway is called the citric acid cycle. We're going to learn all about this later on in the semester. But basically, you take these acetyl carbons and you make carbon dioxide. That's why we breathe out carbon dioxide, because we make it in the citric acid cycle. The citric acid cycle is doing redox reactions. So from general chemistry, you want to remember the acronym oil rig. Oxidation is loss of electron, reduction is gain of electron. So we have a bunch of redox reactions happening in the cell. And these changes of electrons is how we generate energy. And we're going to look into this more in depth later on. So in our cells, eventually our electrons are passed to oxygen. These oxygen electrons will make water via the electron transport change and oxidative phosphorylation. So that's why we need to breathe in oxygen. We use it as our final step in getting energy. When you talk about biosynthetic pathways, they do the exact opposite of your catabolic pathways. It's just running in reverse, more or less. And like the catabolic pathways, where you only create a few common intermediates, you only have a few metabolites that are your starting point. So when you break down stuff, you only break it down into a few things. And when you build stuff, you only use a few things to start with to build it. And that is the end of our first video of Biochemistry 2. I will see you in the next video.